Whoop, whoop, what's up, y'all? Happy Thursday. Hope you're all having a great week. Thank you for joining us for another edition of HMG After Dark. Yeah, pal. Tonight, we will be doing the Graham Dynasty edition of Dark Side of the Ring. So let's get it, pal. Whoop, whoop.
I don't know that there's been any family in wrestling, either related for real or professionally, that had as much impact, as much reach, and as much influence as the Graham family did.
Graham was the hardest punch in wrestling history.
Eddie Graham was not only a great wrestler and a great promoter, he was a visionary.
Eddie's championship wrestling from Florida. It was built on wrestling, and the main events were violent. He gave the people the service.
Eddie Graham was a titan of professional wrestling who ruled his era and passed on his iconic legacy to his only son, Mike.
The son of any great athlete, they've got the scrutiny. But Mike Graham didn't take shit off anybody.
I think maybe he felt like he had to be as good as his father.
Mike Graham followed in his father's footsteps to wrestling greatness and also descended into his own dark world of pain, addiction, and grief.
The wrestling culture is very cutthroat. You have to have this thing about you where nothing's going to break you.
He was under tremendous pressure from so many different angles.
Mike kept shit to himself too, like his father. The apple didn't fall far from the tree.
It all gets pushed under the rug. In certain families, who are you supposed to go to?
Tragic legacy of a wrestling dynasty haunted by self-destruction and suicide.
It is with a deep sense of regret that I announce the untimely death of a friend, colleague, and a leader.
It was like somebody dropped a bomb on all of us.
Grandfather, father, and the kids, that runs in the family genes, right?
Once that spotlight's gone, or once you don't have that ring, like it's emptiness.
Yeah, man, that shit's real, dude. It is real.
Championship wrestling from
You hear
Florida.
Ben talk about all the time that dopamine addiction, that spotlight addiction. It is real.
The legacy of the Graham family in Florida is wrestling to millions of people all over the state for almost 30 years. One member of the Graham family was on the card or in the main event or behind the scenes in the glory years when they were selling 1 million tickets a year just in the state of Florida to see live matches. And their TV ratings were Super Bowl level.
I guess I was used to it. Like when you don't know what's different, it's just what your life is. And I just knew that was a huge part of like my whole Gossett. And Eddie Graham was my grandfather, and Mike Graham is my father.
And that's Eddie Graham in the center of the ring. Son Mike watching very carefully.
Every Sunday, they'd have matches at the Eddie Graham Stadium. The first phone call in the morning was my grandfather calling my dad to talk about the night. We'd wake up and we'd walk into like our family room to see who was crashed out on our couch for a little while, because we had different wrestlers sleeping on our couch at the time. Magnums, yay, Terry Allen. When he first started, you slept on our couch, and he was so sweet. And so I was pretty accustomed to having big, boisterous personalities and people around. The one that scared me was Andre the Giant. And he came like crouching through our front door. He freaked me out. Yeah, I was scared. That was the family business.
Everybody wanted to be on the roster of Championship Wrestling from Florida, both for the money, for the weather, for the girls, and also to learn from Eddie Graham. I'm Jim Cornette. I've had a 40-year career in professional wrestling, but for even longer than that, I've been a collector and an historian. Eddie could make you believe that in the state of Florida, which is exactly what most of the fans believe. He just had a magnetism.
See, this is a good thing that Jim Cornette is, you can use him for. Like, this Jim Cornette's perfect for this spot right now. I'm going to have some of this Arby's roast beef sandwich. 1 second. I'm hungry. You got to have Kevin Sullivan on here because who else would would know as much as that, because he was right there.
Eddie was from the hills in Chattanooga. Very difficult life. His father died young.
Eddie came up through the College of Hard Knocks, just a good old tough country boy. My name is Dottie Curtis, and I am the wife of the late Don Curtis. Don was a very, very knowledgeable wrestler. Don and Eddie met back at around 52, I think it was. They became friends, and Eddie asked Don to come up here to Jacksonville, and he was the promoter up here for quite a few years.
Now Graham and a good solid chop across the throat.
Eddie Graham is probably one of the finest wrestlers that was around in his time. I don't think.
Though born Edward Gossett, Eddie's wrestling career is forever altered when he adopts the Graham name from one of the ring's top stars.
The originator of the Graham wrestling family dynasty was Dr. Jerry Graham. He had the bleached hair and he carried himself like a star, and what's more, he had the gift of gab. Brother teams in New York were over at the time. But if you could find a guy that looks...
Hang on a minute. Dr. Jerry Graham. Isn't that the same one that Vince McMahon looked up to?
Eddie Gossett was in Texas wrestling as Rip Rogers. And a lot of people told him, you look like Jerry Graham.
Yeah, that was the same. Oh, yeah, it was the same Jerry Graham. Yep.
The Graham brothers, the Golden Grahams, as a team, ruled the roost in wrestling in the biggest TV market in the country, where wrestling is already red hot, being presented in the most famous arena in the world, Madison Square Garden.
Eddie performs the surgery while Jerry looks on approval.
And just really drew the crowds in.
And just main eventing Madison Square Garden, they were probably making close to six figures per year in 1958 and 1959, and that would translate into somewhere over $1 million a piece in today's money.
With money and fame to burn, most shocking incident
Damn, bro.
transpires years later in his hometown of Phoenix, Arizona.
One day he got the word that his mother was sick and in the hospital. And he called the hospital and he told the doctor that his mother better come out of that hospital in good health. And then she died. So Dr. Jerry Graham shows up with a 12-gauge shotgun, a 38 caliber revolver, and an 8-inch long hunting knife, and appears in the intensive care unit where he fires a shot at the doctor, and then goes down the hallway and grabs the gurney that his mother's body is on. And as he's taking it down the hallway, here come the orderlies and the interns. And they're trying to tackle him. So he grabs his mother's corpse and slings her over his shoulder. And he's screaming, I just want to take her and bury her. Jerry Graham was so good at his chosen profession, and he was also completely, utterly insane.
Dude, that's crazy.
After 2 years, Eddie Graham could not put up with being partners with Jerry Graham anymore. And he had to leave the greatest spot that he'd ever had.
In 1960, Eddie uproots his family from New York and settles in Tampa, the hub of championship wrestling from Florida.
He was a visionary. He said to himself, I know my capabilities as a wrestler, I can get over here. I can be the star. And this
Tackle all this.
Dude, that's some insane shit. Yo, what's up, Labrat? Good to see you, pal. Whoop, whoop. Yeah, man, you need some NDAs for this one. This is some batshit crazy shit we're seeing here. Like, really learn a little bit more about Dr. Jerry Graham, Vince McMahon's favorite wrestler. That apparently he's like went into a hospital, shot people, and took his mother's body. Like, that's insane.
At the same price. You know what? I've got something I want to tell you. You're gonna be a grandma.
And over the next 25 years, not only did he become the most successful wrestler in the history of Florida and the most popular, but he then taking it over completely.
All right, I had no idea that, okay, that there was actually an entire family and Billy was part of it too. Okay.
A place that everybody wanted to go to wrestle and to learn.
Eddie probably bought the territory just knowing that he had the wherewithal, the brains, the connections with the talent to take the territory to another level. Hi, I'm B. Brian Blair, and I started wrestling in Florida in 1977. Got my start right here in Tampa. The Armory was hot. I would call it like Saturday Night Fever. It was so entertaining.
Yeah, this would have been really cool to see live.
Gave their all every Tuesday night at that place. Growing up in Tampa, these wrestlers were just huge. Fans would come up to them. We couldn't go anywhere without someone wanting to talk to my dad or my granddad.
And it was telling that Eddie Graham would have continued good relations with Vince McMahon Sr. and later on with Vince McMahon Jr. He was someone that the other promoters all called to ask for advice.
The president of the NWA, Eddie Graham, now describing the conditions in the contract. Both wrestlers are to post
The National Wrestling Alliance was an organization of promoters from regional territories all over the country. And there was no major decision made in the NWA without consulting Eddie Graham.
He was president twice. He was well respected, but he was a complicated guy. Anyway,
Man, this is interesting. I like this. This is a good
He
show.
was a tough person. What he told you to do, or
Whoop,
you
whoop.
were out.
Bye.
Now there was
That I didn't like to do. A couple of them I did. Well, they wanted you to break people's bones.
somehow this guy,
Dude, that's kind of what the fuck?
works local shows. Well, butcher by trade. If I see Eddie say his perk for the dogs.
Yeah, Shaq was the man, pal.
Wanna make you look good. If he doesn't come back bleeding, you're through. I kept my job.
Your marching orders were to make this guy bleed.
I had a family. At that period, it was my livelihood, wasn't his livelihood. He was going to go back to the job no matter what. Worst thing I probably ever did.
Eddie's
Man,
hard-nosed ambition
Kevin
dominated
Sullivan
the
definitely
wrestling
seemed like
scene,
he
all-consuming, but his desire for
uh
power is far from his only flaw.
like he definitely seems remorseful for doing that. It's like I didn't want to, but I kind of didn't really have a choice.
Wrestler and promoter Eddie Graham is known for his unrelenting drive, limitless ambition, and his determination to legitimize the business.
Eddie was a go-getter. He had a portfolio of a lot of property. He expanded outside. Rock star in Florida. I mean, politicians were kissing Eddie's ass. To be seen on championship wrestling from Florida when you're running for office was a big deal. And I'm sure Eddie got favors for that too. Eddie was involved in everything.
I think Eddie put a lot of pressure on himself. He never wanted to fail in anything he did. And for most of the things that he did, like flying and being a boatsman and that, diving, he was fabulous. His only problem was that alcohol got to him. One night, Eddie was drinking and decided he was going out on his boat. And his son, Mike, was panicking because he took off in the car. And so Mike, as a young boy, he got on his bicycle and he drove to a cross bridge over the water. And his idea was he was going to jump off that bridge and onto the boat because he was afraid his father would kill himself out in the water. And thank God he missed the boat. I mean, it wasn't there, because if he'd have jumped off of that bridge, he would have possibly drowned in the water. That scared
Jeez,
Eddie.
dude.
That was one of his sobering moments, if you want to call it that. Mike idolized his father and vice versa.
I believe you told me that your own boy does quite a little wrestling. Well, he does. In fact, I'm hoping he'll take the state tournament in the 95-pound division. How old is he? He's 10 years old.
Even though he's a lovable father, he was demanding.
And when my dad started wrestling, he obviously started wrestling under Mike Graham. So maybe that gave him a little bit more of a chip on his shoulder at times.
At 222.5 pounds, Mike Graham.
He gave me all the tools to get as good as I could get before I turned pro. But even at that, the pressure really, and a lot of it came from him. And I loved going someplace where he wasn't going to be, because I knew I could go out, I could wrestle, I could come back, and it was a constant scrutiny.
My grandfather did throw my dad in the ring, be like, okay, let's see what you got.
Break it up again. Arm drag takedown.
I remember my dad always saying, Nicole, don't worry. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. So he was not intimidated by anyone's size.
Mike was shorter and didn't have the same over-the-top personality, but he had the wrestling knowledge in there from growing up with Eddie Graham. So he was a very good worker. He was in plenty of great tag teams, but the attention never went on him specifically. And to be honest, he didn't want to be the top guy. He didn't want to be the big star, because people would have said it was because of his father.
Mike swallowed a lot of shit, and let things go. He did it as well, if not better, than anybody I ever saw being a promoter's kid, to blend in with the guys. I had the pleasure of being his partner, and I had the pleasure of being his opponent.
They're going to hang you. I get Violet Sullivan. I'm waiting for you.
If you got on Mike's bad side, you were on his bad side, and he wasn't going to back down. He knew the pressure he was under. He couldn't go home if he got his ass kicked.
My grandpa was bloody all the time, right? My dad also was bloody.
Jeez, yeah, Florida was insane in that time.
My dad would be in bed because he'd get home so late, and he was just hungover and beat up. And we'd go in to kiss my dad goodbye in the morning, and there'd be tape on his forehead with blood and bite marks on his finger, and the smell of alcohol oozing from his body. And we'd kiss him goodbye. See you later, Dad. Have a good day.
Let me turn right now to Mike Graham because I know he. As the 1980s dawn, Mike Graham joins Eddie in steering the ship at Championship Wrestling from Florida, as the company becomes a breeding ground for wrestling legends, including Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, and Dusty Rhodes.
I am the dream. I am the man.
Dusty was like the original surrogate son. He loved Dusty, and Dusty loved him too.
Dusty Rhodes, of course, was always around. We'd all go out to the beach together. Dusty would always say that fat looks better tan.
Yeah, Daddy.
Dusty under his wing, and he became the wrestler in the history of the state of Florida.
When Dusty turned babyface, the territory was on fire, and all of us became so close. We were like family.
And now the ring beginning to fill. Jerry Briscoe charges in, Don Serrano, Brian Blair, and a host of. As this younger generation elevates the territory to a whole new level, Eddie, now in his
That delicious roast beef, pal. Whoop, whoop.
Plus content on Disney Plus for bundle subscribers.
and to bring him trouble.
There were a lot of things going on in Eddie's life. He was torn between two women. He was in business with some shady characters. I could tell that Eddie was drinking too much. He was maybe taking too much medication. He had a lot of struggles in his life.
And he came home one night and the place wasn't open. And he was so desperate. He went out into the field there and he groveled around in the dirt and found all these bottles. And he sat there in the field and drank the dregs out of those bottles. By this time,
Bro.
alcohol had taken over. He couldn't stop.
Bro. That's like some Mr. Leahy shit.
Consumed by his alcoholism and burdened with personal and professional troubles, Eddie Graham struggles to find meaning beyond the ring.
Over time, people forget who you are, right? My grandmother told a story about how they had gone to a restaurant and they didn't know who he was. He wasn't in the spotlight anymore. But I remember my grandmother being like, how he was just not himself after that encounter.
When that career is over, who are you? Who's looking back in the mirror?
One of the last checks my grandfather wrote was to a liquor store for $8. And in the memo, it said peace of mind. I think if anyone's had time of their life and they just can't find comfort within themselves and they feel like everything's out of control, you just don't have that peace of mind, and he couldn't find it. He turned 55 and I had gone over to my grandparents' house and I was roller skating. And so I was like skating around him in circles. And I'm like, so what'd you get for your birthday? He's like, 55. And I was like, 55 what? He said 55 years. Looking back, I realized he was telling me that he was done. That he got 55 years is what he had.
Well, the Miami Dolphins were playing the San Francisco 49ers. They paged me, Mike Graham, please come to the box office. I walked into the box office and said, hey, my name is Mike Graham. Paged me. And the woman goes, oh, yeah, you got to call home. Call home. What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? It's your dad. Dad. What's wrong with my dad?
His wife, Lucy, went out, is what she told my daughter. And when she came back, he had shot himself not once, but twice. That's what I heard from what the coroner said. And I will spare you the gory details about the bedroom.
He's in the hospital. He's hooked up to machines, and a family member has to say to unplug him or keep him alive. And I got back home the next morning and went to the hospital, and very sad about it. All bandaged up. I said, well, it was no accident. So I looked at Mom and I said, Mom, you know, you gotta do it. You wouldn't want to be here like this. So we went out and said, okay, bullet. And he lived about 5 minutes.
So shocking. I mean, everybody was in a state of shock.
It is with a deep sense of regret that I announce to you at this time the untimely death of a friend, colleague, the leader, Eddie Graham.
I immediately started crying. I couldn't believe it. I mean, why? Why would you do that to your son? To your
It was a crazy time, man. Super crazy time.
If he loved us so much, how could he do this? My brother was very.
Oh no, absolutely not. We'd actually be seeing a lot more suicides, I think.
He was depressed, but they never thought Eddie would go that far.
Sadly.
He was keeping that to himself.
I think he bottled a lot of it up because he didn't want people to know he wasn't as strong as his outside persona was. He realized that if he let people know he was weak, that there were people that would love to have just walked in and taken over. And I think he was probably fighting for the territory too.
We hear the news. Eddie Graham's dead. Holy shit, what's going to happen to Florida? We found out within a year, Florida was on its last legs. Vince McMahon was starting the national expansion in 1984, and the territories were going out of business because Vince was trying to suck up all the talent.
When WWE started robbing the territories, Eddie saw the writing on the wall probably much earlier than most of the people did.
The year before Eddie passed away,
yeah,
the territory started struggling.
Yeah, big time.
Tell me about that.
Well, Dusty left. Took the whole crew with him.
Dad had spent years getting Dusty over and creating Dusty Rhodes, but when Dusty left, he took out the territory with him. And that really made Dad mad. It was like he was almost trying to kill the territory for taking all the talent with him.
In 1984, Dusty Rhodes leaves Florida to work for Jim Crockett Promotions. With the wrestling industry in chaos, Mike Graham is still reeling from his father's death when he inherits the daunting task of leading the territory.
Mike picked up like a man, ran territory.
Man, I do feel bad for Mike in that situation. Like, man, what he had to go through, and then responsibility and all that shit thrown on his shoulders. It's like, fuck.
They even ran an angle after Eddie's death with the Freebirds were down there and they were trying to heat things up. And they thought, well, if we desecrate the memory of Florida's most popular wrestler ever, then the fans will hate us.
Like father, like son, Paul,
Eddie would have wanted Mike to use his death in something that enhanced wrestling.
I'm gonna prove to you that he was more of a man than the three of you ever be. As long as you live, your mind.
It was too far. It was too much. The fans could tell it was desperation because they could see the crowds had shrunk.
At the time, things were already shifting because cable TV was starting to come out, and my dad was just trying to keep it afloat. And no matter what he did, it wasn't going to quite stay afloat.
Struggling under the weight of Eddie's absence, the once great territory lasts just 2 more years before closing its doors.
Eddie would have been the only one to be able to save it because of all of the NWA promoters of every other territory in the country, the one guy that had the best relationship with Vince McMahon Sr. and would have had one with Vince Jr. was Eddie Graham, and he was gone.
Mike and I were having a couple beers and just talking about his dad, and all of a sudden he broke down. I could tell that his dad not being there weighed heavy on Mike every single day.
Already grieving the death of his father, path outside the promotion that has defined his life's work.
This should be an interesting matchup. Mike Graham and Diamond Dallas Page to take on Bill Kazmaier and Juice and Thunder Liger.
Point, Mike was closing in on 40. He got a position with WCW, and he was trying to help mentor some of the younger guys. Obviously, people who knew Mike and knew Eddie respected him and etc. But I think, unfortunately, he never made his mark in WCW as anybody with a lot of pull because he was just one of the soldiers at that point.
I think that when it
Ad break, pal.
IKEA
IKEA.
for unexpected guests.
Give me IKEA, pal.
When you shop online.
IKEA.
Shop a more convenient IKEA with click and collect affordable.
Oh, come on. Could we get a different commercial, please?
IKEA.
IKEA.
Shop a more convenient IKEA with click and collect and more.
IKEA.
Mom,
Seriously, the third ad again? Are you shitting me?
Shop a more convenient IKEA. With
What the fuck, bro?
IKEA.
Mom, it was being written by people that had no idea about wrestling. He got a little bit bitter because he was old school. My dad was definitely not a corporate guy.
Mike never reached the pinnacle.
Very true, pal.
of his dreams, but
Very true.
still had a very successful wrestling career, and he was a good businessman.
I lived on the water, had a multitude of boats, and he won a bunch of offshore races.
My brother loved racing boats. And so my dad and brother actually got the chance to race a couple times. My dad never wanted to sit still. He would always be like, yeah, you sleep when you die. He got his first tattoo when he was 40. and it was like a skull with like fire coming out of the head and a lightning bolt going through it. And then underneath it, it said peace of mind. So my dad would always talk to my brother and I about it. Peace of mind. Like, if you don't have it, you have nothing.
But like his father before him, Mike's search for inner peace often ends at the bottom of a bottle.
He had 2 driver's licenses, actually. One legally under Mike Gossett and one under Mike Graham. So Mike Gossett got 1 DUI, then Mike Graham got 1. And then his drinking got so much worse. After my grandfather passed away, he was miserable. And he changed. Normally, my dad was not like that. He never showed that side to my brother and I. It was always just upbeat. More tough to like my brother, I think, because he wanted him to be a strong man. Stephen did have to fight and prove that he wasn't a wimp growing up, because he was from a wrestling family and he did have kind of like a stronger build. I think everyone expected him to be some tough, mean guy. I think that hurt him in the long run, but he just kind of never found his stride. We talked every day, text, phone call, whatever. I sent my brother text in the morning. He didn't respond. I just thought he was working or doing something. And then my dad called me, asking me if I'd heard from Stephen. I was like, I'll go check on him. And so that's how we found out that he took his life.
Man, this is rough, pal.
I found my brother. I, ran outside and I called my dad first. My dad was saying he beat him. Like, no, don't come here. Don't come here. And so once I was able to leave, I walked in the kitchen with my dad and he said, it's a good thing you found Stephen, because if I would have found him, you'd be burying both of us, because I'd have taken my life right then and there.
It just floored me. I don't know what the demons were that got him. Again, here's his sister, poor little Nicole, just distraught. His dad, everybody distraught. It just didn't have to be.
I wasn't expecting it at all, because Stephen and I went through and saw how hard it was with my grandfather. We saw what it did to my dad. We saw how it absolutely destroyed our family. But with my grandfather doing what he did, I felt that it made it an option. It turned into something that my brother felt, he did it. Now we have my grandfather and my brother, who is my best friend, and I found my brother. So everyone was so worried about me. But
dude, yeah, the wrestling business has brought a lot of entertainment, but it's also caused a lot of pain and suffering and death and misery it's unnecessary.
Haunted by the dead, Mike Graham struggles with the pain of losing another family member to suicide.
I think every parent blames himself. Said, I must have been a shitty son and a shitty father. Pretty heavy.
Sometimes we're our own worst critics, and we're hard on ourselves about different things. And I think that, there's many things that Mike could have thought about, and it was just another one of the things just knocking on the bad side of his brain.
Between his dad and now my brother, he just absolutely was crushed.
Mike and I were close, but we weren't that fuzzy, good feeling close. He called me up and said, hey, I love you, right? I said, I love you too, Mikey. And that was it. He hung up the phone.
My dad met my daughter and I at a park, and I was like, Dad, this ends with Stephen. I'm like, look at her. She doesn't deserve this. What your dad did was horrible. What Stephen did, we're never going to recover from it. But this ends now. Look at her. She doesn't deserve this. And he was like, you're right, Nicole. You're right, Nicole. you're right. But less than 2 years later, he did the same.
He was in Daytona Beach, bike week or something, with his wife. And so when I get up, she was outside and said she was going to go see some friends.
Dead in his son Steven's cowboy boots.
Damn, dude.
He couldn't break the cycle.
You can't see what's behind the person's eyes. They're telling you one thing, they're smiling, but they may be, they may be just absolutely torn up inside. Then you realize he's gone. End of story, no more. There's no more.
I mean, I was still trying to pick up the pieces after my brother. It was less than 2 years apart between my brother and my dad. After the conversations I had with my dad, asking him, telling him, begging him, please, this ends with Steven, it was just a different level of pain.
Mike had been away from wrestling for some time, and I hadn't seen him in years, but then the news comes out, and that was a shock. Even if you're not shocked at anything in wrestling, you still think, well, the same thing can't happen to 2 different generations. They can't do the same thing. And it happened to 3 generations. You just, how much, same family, how much more can go on?
The pattern of suicide that haunts the Gossett family reaches far beyond Eddie, Mike, and Steven. This heartbreaking cycle of tragedy actually spans 4 generations and 5 men.
A lot of people don't know this, but Eddie's father killed himself.
Jeez.
Also, Eddie's brother Skip killed himself. It's a very vicious cycle when you have more than one suicide. One suicide is one too many, but when you have multiple suicides within the same family structure, it's
5 within 3 generations. That's insane.
Explanation or thought, because I'm not a doctor, obviously, but is that when one happens, then it makes it viable for someone else when they're having a hard time. And also the fact that depression and addiction is hereditary. And unless you have someone step in and recognize it and get help and let them know that it's not normal what you're feeling, but it's going to be okay. That just wasn't quite happening in my family.
Big time lesson learned. Because it isn't just the people that go, it's the people that are left behind. Heavy burden for Nicole to carry and heavy burden for her daughter.
Man, dude.
We are at the old armory, which is now the Brian Glazier Jewish Community Center. And Larry Simon, who was Boris Malenko, who my grandfather had huge feuds with, his son helped put this together in a way to commemorate all the wrestlers that came here every Tuesday for many, many years. So it's pretty great to see, actually. This is
once everything's perfectly organized.
Yep, Von Erichs immediately come to mind. Exactly.
Grammarly will ensure you feel confident nailing your final thesis,
or even the Hearts too.
From start to finish. Welcome to Ideation Station.
Oh yeah, you did. Hearts, Von Erichs are like the 2 you immediately think of.
Don't pop it, catch it. Mighty Patch Pimple Patches absorb gum overnight. Pimple, meet your Mighty Patch. More than half of pets face health issues each year. With the unique power of Royal Canin's veterinary diets, every meal can support your pet's health and unleash their playful selves. Ask your vet professional about Royal Canin's veterinary nutrition range.
This is my dad.
Yeah, no, I don't think any family got it worse than the Grahams, the Harts, and the Von Erichs.
Nothing could keep the fans away. This was the home of the Titans of Tampa, and this will always be the house the championship wrestling from Florida built. I think wrestling fans should know that they absolutely respected the fans, and I hope that the fans that met them felt that. There was so much good, so much laughter, a lot of good times, and those are the things that I focus on more than anything else because they were really exceptional people. I remember Eddie, my papa, as bare-chested with a cast net off the dock catching mullet for us. A lot of love. A lot of love. My brother, my bestie, my best friend. I just wish he knew how everyone loved him and wanted to be there for him. Dad. We had that tough relationship because I called him out on things, but there was so much love and respect. I miss my dad so much. I wish he was here to see my daughter grow up because he's missing out on a lot, but I miss him.
Some of the best times of my life were with the Grahams, and with all the people that the Grahams brought in, there is a plethora of good times. A plethora of good times.
Dear friends of mine, enjoyed my time with them. Wish we could have had a lot more days.
The thing to do is not dwell on the bad, dwell on the good. That's what gets me through. Nicole, love her. Love her. She's the legacy of that family.
It's my grandfather being silly with me always.
Hey, what's up, Gam? Good to see you, pal.
So I felt like I could find
Yeah, he's gone too. Whoop, whoop.
And so I found the Crisis Center of Tampa Bay, and they offer amazing services. And I feel that I've come to a point in
How you doing, pal? Yeet.
That I can hopefully get a word out there that may strike a chord with someone to make them call for help, or survivors that are struggling to get out of bed because they've lost family members to know that they should live their lives to honor those that they have lost.
There has to be a lesson to everybody that's watching this program that if you feel suicidal, there's helps right around the corner. And I don't care who you are, somebody loves you, always.
You have to just make that step by reaching out to someone just to say, something's not right. I'm having these thoughts. Just speak up is what I'd ask. You can have fame, family, money, but if you don't have that peace of mind, you have nothing. My grandfather and my dad clearly didn't have it. And my brother.
Oh, you got this, pal. Just hang in there.
To me,
less than 2 weeks. Less than 2 weeks. Well, actually, shit. I forgot. End of the month. I forgot we got New Year's too. Shit, my bad.
Awareness. Very simple. And it's just an amazing reminder of where I've gotten with my life and how I feel and peace. I have so much to be grateful for, and I'm going to live my best life because that's the best way I can honor them. I'm so happy right now. Things are great. My daughter's thriving, amazing friends, family. I'm really happy actually. So show.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for us right here at HMG After Dark. See what's our schedule for this week. So we got Friday Locker Room, I think. I can't really speak on that. I'm not sure what the details are on that, but and of course, we got the SmackDown late start watch along, and then of course Smack Attack on Saturday, a late start Saturday night's main event watch along, and then of course the Wreckage, and then we'll be doing a TNA Impact replay watch along, and then of course Monday Locker Room followed up with Impact Attack. Hope you have a great rest of your night. Much love. Yeet, yeet, whoop, whoop. Yeah, pal.